Hi all, in this video I will explain you the transaction management system in the Spring Boot application with a real life use case. So I will be using Spring 3, Java 17, MySQL, Postman and IntelliJ IDEA. The topic that I will be covering is that I will explain you what is this transaction means and why we actually required, and I will give you some real life scenarios to explain you better. Then I will create a Spring Boot project from Spring Initializer, and I will implement a flight booking use case with user and payment services. Then I will provide you all the step-by-step implementation of transaction management system. Then I will create some failed scenario where you will get the payment failure, and on that case we need the transaction annotations. So all the things I will be explaining you, and I will be explaining you about the successful scenario as well. So we'll be creating this type of architecture having a user and payment and the corresponding controller, entity, exception, repository, request class, service class. So let's go ahead with the video. Before going ahead with the video, I request you please subscribe to the channel to get the videos on Spring Boot, microservices, REST API, Java. So let's get started. So I will go to the Spring Initializer first to create the project. Before creating the project, as I mentioned, I will be using a user and the payment services. So let's understand by taking a general use case. So assume that you are booking a flight ticket, so and you enter your information like user information. Now while you are booking your tickets, and during the making of the payments, there is a failure on your payments due to the some system failure or some network issue or some things related to that. But in this case, like as initially you have entered user information, so that will be stored on the database. Later, like you have did the payment, so on that case the payment failure or success will be executed. So now all the on a large scale application, like for thousands or lakhs of query being stored on the database. If that is the case happen, then lot of information will be stored in the user database, which will be meaningful, because if the payment is failure, on that case there is no requirement to store the user information uh, on the database. If the payment is successful, then it is required to store the information of user as well as the payment on the database. So that was the main issue of this. So to overcome this type of problem, then we are using the Spring transaction management, which will be using the some type of transaction annotation and as well as the enabled transaction management annotations. So I will be come to that part later. Now I will create a similar kind of user entity and payment entity. Then I will create a controller class, entity class, an exception class, repository classes, a request and services. So I will do the step by step in front of you. So and I will request you to code along with me. And if you have face any issue in the meantime, you can ask on the comment section. And I request you please provide any feedback on the comment section. So let's go ahead and the Spring Initializer. So I'll be using Java, Maven, and 3.3.4, and I will add as group ID the developer. And artifact name I will be put as transaction, and description use case of transaction management package jar and Java is 17. Then I will be add dependencies like Spring Web to make a RESTful API. Then I will be using Spring JPA to process the data on relational database. Then I will be using MySQL driver to connect the MySQL with our application. So I will generate this project and I will open in IntelliJ. We see this transaction project has been imported. I will go to this form.xml file. Then I will click, do the right click, and then I will be doing add. So after doing that, it will reload all the dependencies in our local system. The dependencies is being imported. So I will go to this source main and the resources application.properties file, and here set up properties I need to be added to connect with the database. So I have added this, so it will show the SQL query. It will data definition layer. It will directly update the entity and the some username, password, and database URL. Now our we'll go to this Java, and this is the transaction application. So now we need to create a user entity and payment entity. So let me create that. So I have created this user entity and as well as the payment entity with ID, name, email, bank balance, and the getter and setter method for this, and the payment that or ID, price, airline, and name, and the user ID for the corresponding payments. Now next, what we need to create. Now next we need to create a repository class which will extend the JPA repository. So let me create that. I've created the user repository which will extend the JPA repository where we have by default SQL methods. So you can extend and you can get enough understanding, and the payment method where it is extending and the JPA repository of this entity along with the data type for that ID. Now we have created the entity as well as a repository. Now we need to have some kind of request payload, because that request payload will come to this service class and will implement those things on the service class. So before creating the service, I will be having the request payload or the request class. So let me create that. So I have created this request payload name as request booking. So this request have user ID or the user details and the payment details and the getter setter method. Let me show you how the payload will look like to get better understanding. So it will look like somehow like this. The user name will be entered, email will be entered, the bank balance and the payment like price and airline name. So those field will be there. So now I'll go back to this. So now request payload is being added. So now we need to have the service class, so which will where we will do the business operation. So let me create that. Created the service class called flight booking, and where we have auto add the payment repository and the user repository, and there is one method for book flight. It will take the payload like ticket booking. This payload it will take, then it will do the operation like user repository dot save and ticket booking dot get user. It will store the user information, and then I will store the payment request on the using the payment object like ticket booking dot get payment. Then I will set user for this particular, because if we go to this payment we need to set the user ID as well. So this user ID we are setting from this, and we are later we are doing the save successful operation. But whether the user have sufficient fund or not, because if the bank balance is a 3,000 and the payment is 9,000, so it will be a failure operation. So I will create such scenario. So to do that I need to have some customized exception. So I will let me create those things and some helper class for which it will validate whether if the balance is less than the flight ticket price, then it will show the exception. Let me create those, because if we show you that there will be some helper class will be there, name as ticket utils, and the exception class where insufficient bank balance exception will be thrown. Let me create those two. So I have created a exception class which is extend runtime exception, and I have just created a default what is the default constructor with the argument, and I have created a util class over the helper class where I have created a method to have sufficient balance or not, where it will have two arguments, bank balance or flight price. If the bank balance is less than the flight price, it will show an exception as insufficient bank balance. So I will go back to this service class. Then I will go to this. Let me. There is two flight booking class has been created, so I will delete one. So I will go to this flight booking service class. So here before this payment, I will have this exception to verify, because whether the balance is greater than the price of the ticket or not. Let me add that validation. So I have imported this ticket util class. I will import this ticket utils and have sufficient balance. So let me import that import class. So it will validate. Now almost everything is done, except we need to create a controller class where for the ticket booking we will create an API for /booking, a post API. It will get the payload, and it will call the service method. So let me create that controller class. I have created a controller class named as tickets with annotated to REST controller, and over at this flight booking service class, and we have on the booking one endpoint, and it will take the payload of ticket booking having the user and payment details. Then it will call the book flight of the service class. So let me run this application. Before running this applications, I request you please subscribe to the channel if you are still watching the video. So I have run the applications, so it is building and it will run. Before that, I will just cover you that I have almost implement the flight booking system. Then I will show the failed cases as well as the successful cases. And in this particular scenario, in the failed cases also user details will be stored, and in the successful cases the user details as well as the payment details will be stored. But in the failed cases, we should not store the user details. Here, then we will use the transactional annotation, and will enable the transaction management in the Spring Boot application. Then that will reduce or remove our issue. So now go ahead with the basic step with failed and successful cases. Application has been started fine at 4080 port, and we see like new tables was created naming as user info and the payment info. So I will go to this MySQL first, then I will go to Postman to hit the API. So I will check, and initially it won't have any details like user info, nothing, and the payment info is nothing. Now I will go to this Postman, then I will hit this API. So I will make it as 13,000. So this is a successful scenario. Then I will click on send with the airline as Akasa Air and a name as Subhadip. So we are getting the ticket booked successfully. Now I will go to this DB details, and then we will see that user info also stored with ID 1, and payment info also stored with the user ID 1. Now I will go to this just a minute. I will go to this here console, and we see that new insert payment info, insert user info, new details has been inserted. There is two insert statement, right? Now I will click on the unsuccessful scenario. Here I will write name as Subho and email ID as Subho, and I have 3,000. I like the bank balance, and the payment of this is 5,000. I will make it as Air India. So this is the like a failed scenario. Then I will click on this send. Then we are seeing that some error is coming. So I'll check what error is coming, because this is the failed scenario, and we see this insufficient bank balance exception is coming, and we are getting that insufficient bank balance as a statement. But we see that there's a one insert operation is being done. So if we see this insert operation, insert user, only the user information are being stored. That the payment information are not stored. So that is not a like a real life use case. So you see that details has been stored, user details with and the user ID 2, but the payment is not being stored. So here the concept of transaction comes, where in the service level we will use the transactional annotation, and in the main application we will use enable transaction management annotation. Then we'll do the same scenario, and we'll hit the API again. On that case, this issue will be resolved. Let me stop that applications, and I will go to this transaction application, and I will use enable transaction management. So it is coming from where? Coming from transaction.annotation. Then I will go to this service class. Then I will, you can do this class level annotation also, and I will do this method level annotations only. So what is that? Transactional, TRAN, transactional from Spring framework, not from other, only from Spring framework. So I have with this transactional keyword. So I run the application. Before that, I will drop this table which was created earlier. Drop table. Now I will run the application. So application started fine on 8080 port. So I will go to this MySQL first, and I will reload this MySQL DB. And this a table are being created, payment and user info. Now there is no details. Then I go to the this Postman, and I'll do the same case. Here I will make it as bank balance as 9,000 and airline as Air India only. So this is the successful scenario. Anyhow, this will store. So I'll click on send. So it will do a successful operation. I'll go to this MySQL, and I'll check this details has been added with the payment info and the user info with the user ID on. And we see this console also that two SQL statement, insert statement, payment info, insert user info are being added. Now I will just hit an unsuccessful operation also. So I'll go to the same. I'll do this name as deep bank balance. I will make it 1000. Then price is 15. Then I will make the airline name as Spice Set. Then I will do the send the request. Click on send. Now you see that some error is coming. I will go to this database. I will just fetch the details, and we see that payment info also not stored and the user info also not stored. So if you go to this error section or the console, we see that error is coming with insufficient bank balance, but there is no insert operation for the user. In the previous case, we see the insert operation for the user but not for the payment. Here, like insert operation for neither payment or nor user is being done. So using the transaction, we have understood the concept of like data consistency, where there's no required to store the user information, and it will be automatically handled by the transactional keyword. Like if there is a lot of pipeline operation, and if any of the pipeline operation is being failed, then it will not store any data in the database. So that's all with the video. Please subscribe to the channel, and feel free to provide any feedback on the comment section. So thank you for watching the video.